part Wargreymon, part Metal Garurumon. They digivolve together to become Omnimon. The miraculous Mega Knight has been a mainstay of the Digimon TCG since the very first set, and almost without exception has been a meta-relevant force in every one of its incarnations over the years. BT17 Secret Crisis finally gave Digiboomers and fans of Omnimon what we've been begging for: a proper way to combine the Dragon of Courage and the Wolf of Friendship into a force of sheer destruction. And Bandai nailed it, creating a deck that could challenge the fiercest archetypes out there. And for me, it's a deck that embodies everything that I love about this game. Omnimon ACE is a deck that aims to recreate the iconic scene when Wargreymon and Metal Garurumon fuse together and become the titular knight, destroying the legions of Diaboromon clones in the climax of our war game. Unlike previous incarnations of the deck, which focused more around building a single stack which capped off with Omnimon, this deck is all in on Warp Digivolution and DNA Digivolution to efficiently summon the Royal Knight. And in a serious departure from how Omnimon decks were usually played, you actually run both Agumon and Gabumon as well as their respective megas. Omnimon ACE is the beating heart of the deck. It's a level 7 with the ability to DNA Digivolve on your turn using any level 6 with the Greymon name and any level 6 with the Garurumon name on board. It also has the Blast DNA Digivolution keyword, allowing you to combine a Wargreymon on the board with a Metal Garurumon in hand, or vice versa when your opponent attacks. Omnimon ACE has Raid and Blocker, combining offense and defense, and as is common with Ace Digimon, it has an effect that you can trigger on play or when digivolving. If DNA Digivolving, you choose one of your opponent's Digimon and bottom deck everything with the same level, then you delete one of their Digimon, the latter being the effect you can always get when playing or digivolving. And of course, as a level 7 ace, you will lose 5 memory if Omnimon is removed from the field. In most cases, anyway. Omnimon ACE is a devastating card, representing a total board wipe in most situations. It provides offense and defensive utility, and with the correct materials in its sources, can swing for lethal very quickly. But it's also extremely vulnerable, lacking any protection, and it rightly takes significant resources to summon him in the first place. Thankfully, Bandai gave this deck all the pieces it needs to get Omnimon onto the board as efficiently as possible. Both the Agumon and Gabumon from BT17 have the flexibility to digivolve on red or blue eggs, which ensures that you have easy access to both their lines. They each have an ability to fetch resources as well, if you have the right tamer in play. Agumon grabs back a named Greymon, Garurumon, or Omnimon card from the trash at the start of your main phase if you have a Tai Kamiya in play, while Gabumon draws 1 at the start of your main phase if there's a Mat Ishida in play. Both rookies also have inheritable effects to DNA Digivolve at the end of the turn, which pairs very nicely with their respective megas. Speaking of which, the Wargreymon and Metal Garurumon share an ability to reduce their play cost by 3 if their respective tamers are in play. They also share an optional on-play / when digivolving effect to warp the rookie from the other line into its mega form for free. Wargreymon warps Gabumon into Metal Garurumon, and the latter warps Agumon into Wargreymon. Both megas also come equipped with other useful qualities. If you don't use their warp effects, they can still get some work done when played or digivolving. Wargreymon deletes an 8000 DP or less Digimon, and Metal Garurumon can prevent a Digimon or tamer from suspending until the end of the opponent's turn. And finally, both equip Omnimon with some powerful inheritable skills, with Wargreymon allowing you to trash a security on the swing once per turn, and Metal Garurumon allowing you to restand on the swing once per turn. Now, if your opponent tries to get around your Blast DNA skill, the deck can still get you there with its signature option card. Miraculous Mega Knight. This Swiss Army knife card accomplishes a ton of setup, all for 2 memory and yes, a dual color requirement. The main effect lets you play a Gabumon or Agumon from your hand or trash for free, and then you place it in the battle area. The security skill lets you play a Taikamiya or Mat Ishida from your hand or trash for free, then it adds itself to the hand. Its delay effect triggers when your level 6 Greymons or Garurumons would leave the field outside of battle, allowing you to essentially trigger Blast DNA Digivolution to dodge the removal and summon Omnimon ACE. And finally, you have a Tai and Mat Dual Tamer that satisfies your name requirements and meets the color requirements for your signature option card. The Dual Tamer has an all turns effect that triggers when any of your Digimon are played or Digivolve, netting you 1 memory if you have a Greymon species in play, and another memory if you have a Garurumon in play. Finally, it has an end of turn skill to allow any of your named Omnimons to attack the enemy player. These 7 cards represent the core of the archetype, and achieve the goal of fielding a level 7 DNA Digivolving boss monster quite consistently. That boss monster can wipe the opponent's field and swing for upwards of 3 damage in 1 turn, so the payoff is definitely worth it. However, it's important to understand the limitations of the archetype as well. This is still a multi-card combo to actually field the Omnimon ACE, with the most proactive line to your Royal Knight requiring a Rookie, 2 Megas, and Omnimon ACE itself. And you can tack on the Dual Tamer since you really want that line to be as memory efficient as possible and, get you the swing at the end of the turn. It's also crucial to understand that unlike the Greymon and Garurumon tribal decks earlier in the game's history, Omnimon ACE, repeat after me, lacks protection within its engine, which makes your boss monster extremely vulnerable to basically every form of removal. Even a simple D-Digivolution trigger, which is available on a number of level 4s at this point, will allow the opponent to steal 5 memory and pop off. And of course, you can always crash into something in security, since 15,000 DP is the average stat line for most other level 7s, and a lot more cards have been printed at the 16k threshold recently. This deck is also extremely unforgiving to play with, since you'll often give your opponent quite a bit of memory off of your warp plays, so they will have plenty of resources to try and answer your Omnimon ACE. And of course, if you're forced to slam your Megas or even your Tamers too early, your opponent can often run you over. In any case, this compact core leaves you plenty of room to fill out your deck with the plethora of cards available in both the Greymon and Garurumon pools, helping to mitigate some of the deck's issues, and as we'll see later, Omnimon itself has a lot of variants and support catering to those variants as well. Before we get any further into this video, I want to look at what you can consider a standard build of the deck, and specifically what I'd call a quote-unquote first build list. This is far from optimal, but instead is meant to teach a player the most straightforward lines of play, familiarize themselves with some of the main support pieces, and start to grasp where the flex points in the deck are. The core cards from the previous section are all here, and to keep things simple, you play them all at 4, which is generally considered optimal anyway. Now then, for the actual list, we'll start with the egg. Generally, this deck plays 4 eggs, and BT14 Koromon is your best bet. Since we only have 1 Gabumon that can evo on a red egg, we have to skew our base towards Agumon, most of which want a Koromon as their named egg to avoid paying 1 memory for the dual color Agumons specifically. This particular Koromon also has an extremely generic draw effect, netting you a card when your opponent's security is removed once per turn. So it's good when rookie rushing, all the way up to when you're trashing security with your Omni Ace. BT12 Agumon is the most common pick for the deck's Rookie Searcher, since it can grab Greymons and Omnimons, as well as a named Taikamiya Tamer, which of course includes your Dual Tamers. And considering how many pieces you need, the deck has to prioritize Searchers that can grab 2 targets. And this actually segues perfectly into why you typically run the EX4 Gabumon. This sadly cannot evo on Koromon, or even a red or blue egg for that matter, so you will always be hard playing it. But it can potentially grab 2 targets, nabbing a Garurumon species as well as anything from Agumon's line all the way up to an Omnimon. The quirk of this card is that it always returns whatever you don't take to the top of the deck, which does have some serious implications at higher levels of play. This deck typically only runs 1 level 4, and that's the secret rare Greymon from BT17. While not explicitly a part of the core engine, it basically functions as glue for the deck. This Greymon has a unique feature to copy the names of everything level 3 and under in its sources, allowing it to be Koromon, Agumon, or Gabumon simultaneously. It can accomplish this since it also digivolves off of any colors except for purple and black, and can evo off of any named Agumon rookies as well. This flexibility is important since it makes it fair play for the warp effects of the War Greymons and Metal Garurumons that you run. If this Greymon has the Koromon name when digivolving, it'll buff itself by 3000 DP, and then it has an effect to delete something with equal or lower DP to it, allowing you to pop an 8000 DP body on average. This card also has an on-deletion effect, both on itself and via Inheritable, that lets you either reset your breeding area or play a Tai or Kari Kamiya tamer for free, accomplishing quite a bit of setup or stabilizing your game state. As for our level 6s, you typically want to run extra names of the War Greymons and Metal Garurumons, since you need the materials for your DNA Digivolution plays, and the best ones we have right now are the secret rare War Greymon from BT14 and the secret rare Metal Garurumon from BT15. Both have conditions to warp from their rookie forms, specifically requiring your opponent to have a Digimon with 10,000 DP or more, while you have their preferred tamers in play. Tai for War Greymon and Matt for Metal Garurumon. Both of these level 6s lack inheritables, which will make the Omnimon they create quote-unquote incomplete, but they do have powerful effects of their own to help offset that. The War Greymon gains Raid and Pseudo Blitz when digivolving, and when attacking, it gains Piercing and Security Attack +1 if there's a tamer in play. This card lets you push a ton of damage early on, and potentially answer a big body without having to resort to Omni Ace. In some cases, you can honestly win the game with this card alone. The Metal Garurumon will freeze up to 3 Digimon and or Tamers, preventing them from suspending until the end of the opponent's turn when you digivolve into it. It also has Evade to dodge deletion by suspending, and it has an all turns effect to unsuspend once per turn when it suspends, giving you either 2 swings or 2 instances of Evade. Supplementing your level 7 lineup is Omnimon ACE, which can blast Digivolve over your War Greymons, or over your Agumons if you have 2 or less security remaining. On play, or when digivolving, it deletes your opponent's Digimon up to this card's DP stat line, which usually means 14,000 DP's worth of the opponent's Digimon. And on the swing, you can trash an opponent's security if you have a tamer in play. And then there's Omnimon Alter B, which we'll discuss in more depth later on. Suffice it to say that this card is basically nitrous oxide and will help you steal wins out of nowhere. As for tamers, you'll typically see ST15 Tai Kamiya as the memory setter of choice. It provides a black source, which comes up in some variants of the deck, but mainly he's used for his all turns effect to gain 2000 DP and draw a card when a Digimon's attack is redirected. This allows you to block bigger hits or punch over bigger Digimon with Omni Ace's raid skill while farming more combo pieces. Likewise, BT14 War Greymon really likes having this card in play. EX4 Tie-in Mat serves mostly as a secondary dual color source, though it has some decent effects of its own. You can suspend it to gain a memory when an Agumon or Gabumon are played, and when you digivolve into a Greymon or Garurumon species, you can play out a rookie from the opposite line from your hand or trash for free. For example, going into your secret rare Greymon would let you play a Gabumon out. And then there's the Tai and Kari Dual Tamer, which is sort of a weird searcher with some perks. It has an alternate skill to net you a memory when you hatch in the breeding area, and an end of turn effect to bottom deck itself in order to draw one and then play out a named Tai Kamiya or Kari Kamiya Tamer for free. So basically this is here to cycle in your other dual tamers or your memory setter for one less memory and, help you potentially draw into them if you don't have them on hand. These are basically all the cards you need to be familiar with when first picking up the deck. And while just a few are outright cuttable, most will genuinely just fluctuate in the ratios you play as you put more hours into the deck. Now, on that note, I do want to stress that there is an unfortunate barrier to entry with this deck, at least when playing on paper. So you really have to make sure that you're going to be putting a ton of hours into it if you decide this is one you want to pick up. If you weren't counting, I made the point to mention that you need quite a few expensive secret rares to put together a functioning list. While the ratios here aren't what you'll always play per se, it's probably what you want to at least own in order to adjust your ratios, ideally to the format and your local meta. Just have the cards on hand. The rest of the deck is actually dirt cheap, but in the absence of these cards, the standard build is basically unplayable. And as we're settling into the Special Booster 2.5 meta, there's an additional secret rare that we'll need to talk about later. Regardless, if the price is not an issue or you're content to just play digitally, I do recommend that you start with a build like this. Try running some practice games against whatever decks are popular in the current format, and as you become more comfortable with the cards themselves and how they work within the given meta, you can start making adjustments, introducing techs, or exploring some of the wilder builds out there. Like any deck, there are many lines of play that you can take in pursuit of victory. And for this deck in particular, victory comes more from good sense and good timing than anything, but still there are, of course, a few combos worth memorizing. If there's one combo you must know, it's the bread and butter warp combo. All you really need is either a Gabumon or Agumon, one of the BT17 megas and a matching name, and Omni ACE. Ideally, you'll want BT17 Tie and Mat in play as well to make the whole line more memory efficient. With your rookie of choice in play, or promoted out of raising, you slam the mega of the opposite line. If you have Agumon, you slam Metal Garurumon, the BT17 one specifically, using its cost reduction if you have the dual tamer in play to make it an 8 cost. Metal Garurumon's effect will warp your Agumon into a War Greymon, and then you can use War Greymon's effect to pop something if needed, or if it's the BT14 one, you can actually swing at this point too. If you have the dual tamer in play, you can trigger it here to gain back 2 memory and reduce the overall cost of the combo to 6. And if you've passed turn, which you probably have, you can use the Agumon's inheritable skill, or Gabumon's inheritable skill, to trigger an end of turn DNA Digivolution into Omnimon. You can choose to pass up on the end of turn effect and instead leave your 2 megas standing to threaten the blast DNA Digivolution, and hey, if you have Miraculous Mega Knight in play, well, even better. But basically, you either want to get to the board state where you have multiple level 6s in play, or you just get to Omnimon and then pop off from there. BT14 Skull Greymon is a card with a surprising amount of potential in Omni ACE. When digivolving, you can trash a card in hand to pop your Digimon with the lowest level and the opponent's Digimon with the lowest level. Skull Greymon also has an on-deletion skill to float into an Agumon and give that Agumon rush if you have a Tai Kamiya in play. To get the most value out of this card, we need BT17 Greymon, since it grants the ability to reset your breeding area or spawn a tamer for free via its inheritable. So, with your Agumon of choice in play and a Tai Kamiya on hand, you digivolve into BT17 Greymon and use its when digivolving skill to maybe clear 1 body. Then you digivolve into Skull Greymon, and with its skill, you can pop something else. Probably the only Digimon your opponent has left in play. You can trigger either on deletion effect first, but I'd recommend using Greymons first, since you can play, for example, an EX4 Tie and Mat to extend your plays. Then you can trigger Skullgreimon's effect to spawn an Agumon and give it Rush. With EX4 tie-in mat, you can potentially maintain your turn since you gain a memory when playing an Agumon or Gabumon. Then you can either swing at security, evo into another BT17 Greymon to clear a potential third body, or do whatever else comes to mind, honestly. Omnimon Alter B is the definition of a win button card. This black-clad Holy Warrior gives you the ability to finish your opponent from very high security counts, which is really valuable with how fast the game has become. Alter B does a lot, but there's really only one aspect we care about for its game-winning combo. On the swing, you can trash upwards of 3 level 6 or higher sources to delete the lowest play cost Digimon or Tamer your opponent controls, so 3 consecutive targets if you trash the full amount. And if you trash 3 cards from its sources, you trash the top 2 cards of your opponent's security. Sequenced properly with BT17 Wargreimon's inheritable, this allows you to trash 3 security and potentially close out the game extremely early. Now, it's important to note here that trashing Omni Ace will cause you to overflow 5, but if you're winning the game on that swing, you probably don't care. You can also kill your opponent from 4 security, but this requires you to swing with Omni Ace and use the inheritables of both Wargreymon and Metal Garurumon from BT17, dealing 2 damage and restanding. Then you Digivolve into Alter B and swing again, trashing the remaining 2 security and connecting for lethal. This is riskier, but against decks with low DP averages or fewer security triggers, this is a very tempting option. Omnimon Ace straddles the line between Rookie Rush and Mega Zoo, or at least that's what a surface level glance at the deck will tell you. Really, the deck is all about forcing your opponent into difficult situations where they have to gamble their entire board on whether or not your Omni Ace is in fact live for a Blast DNA Digivolution. But as powerful as Omnimon Ace is, you are still stuck with the potential to overflow 5 and, well, 0 protection to stave that off. So you have to walk a very fine line between aggression, board control, and yes, some risky plays in order to win the game. Omni Ace doesn't really have any amazing matchups per se, but you'll generally do well into decks that lack protection and those with fairly linear win conditions. Takemi Kazuchi, for example, will usually be checkmated by a well-timed level 6 and miraculous Mega Knight combo. On the flip side, Omni Ace struggles into decks with protection, since they can either ignore your Omnimon's mass removal or force you to waste it all on one target and, get much less out of it. Decks with defensive removal, such as 3 Musketeers for example, can also do things like, trash a Durblitz to de-digivolve your Omnimon and just steal the turn back. Or you can just trigger an option in security, like, Gaia Force if someone's still playing that, and then cry when your whole stack goes boom, and again, passes turn. Your early game is arguably the most important phase of the battle. Omnimon Ace is a powerful finisher, but it lacks staying power. So you need to do as much as possible to ensure that your first Omnimon can get the job done on its own. You also need to find quite a few cards and establish a few combo pieces early on. Use your rookies to search and then do some chip damage with early swings out of raising, drawing with BT14 Koromon's skill. You should also use BT17 Greymon to help clean up the board as needed and establish Tamers too. You're looking to reduce your opponent's security to 3, or 2 at most if their deck does not play a ton of Tamers or delay options. Attacking any further than that may give your opponent too many resources and allow them to re-establish themselves beyond the point where Omni Ace can actually blow them out. Basically, you have to play a very tight game here. Give them the minimum amount of memory possible every turn, even if it feels like you're going a little slow. Learning not to tunnel vision on things like BT17 Greymon's pop effect is also important. If there's nothing to pop and, it can just let you choke the opponent to 1, it's better to evo the Greymon in back and then just come out swinging next turn, where you might just get your free Tamer out anyway. Speaking of Tamers, one of your priorities is to get BT17 Tie and Mat into play. ideally using your BT17 Greymon's on deletion effect. This allows you to cast Miraculous Mega Knight and establish it on board. It also makes your plays way more memory efficient for the rest of the game. And whatever you do not get greedy at this phase of the game and do things like, I don't know, slamming BT17 War Greymon to pop smaller bodies, or worse, slamming BT17 Melga to just freeze something for one turn. If your opponent high rolls and you absolutely have to stop them, then fine, but avoid these costly plays as much as possible, especially if you don't have Miraculous Mega Knight to back you up, or the Dual Tamer to reduce the cost of your megas and make those costly plays hurt a little less. Mid-game is where you get to have a lot of fun. This is all about positioning, where you're looking for a board state that Omni ACE can crack wide open. But of course, your opponent will likely have their own game plan rolling, so your priority will usually be hanging on after their initial push. My mantra here is that the name of the game is to sustain. Now, while this deck doesn't have any crazy levels of protection, or really any at all, you actually have a lot of tools to contest the board and prevent your opponent from getting too far ahead. Just do as much as you can, basically, without actually resorting to Omnimon ACE. Your BT17 pieces can be useful at this point, since you may have enough tamers established to make the hard slam less costly. And if you have Miraculous Mega Knight in place, then your opponent will have a much harder time answering them properly, even if you do give over a decent amount of memory. But really, you'll want to lean on BT17 Greymon to further manage the field and keep the opponent from going too wide, and back that up with your 2 secret rare megas, using BT14 War Greymon to punch over enemy boss monsters, at least when the threat of an ace isn't looming, and use BT15 Melga to freeze out entire boards and put up a sticky body that's almost guaranteed to turn into an Omnimon. BT15 Melga is usually your MVP here, since freezing out key tamers or Digimon can lock your opponent out of certain strategies, such as preventing Digi-Cross tamers from suspending to use the materials under them, or staving off the memory gain from cards like EX2 Takato. This guy is no slouch in the offense department either, allowing you to sneak in a quick 2 checks and then finish the game with Omnimon ACE out of, well, basically nowhere. Sticking a level 6 in most cases will set you up for a smooth transition into the late game. And if you can manage to pull off the warp combo, establishing both a War Greymon and Metal Garurumon on board with extra names in hand, you can even find a path to victory without Miraculous Mega Knight. At that point, your opponent will almost always be forced to walk into an Omni ACE, more often than not, or, risk getting blown out anyway. The moment you summon your first Omnimon ACE, you have entered the late game. This has to be your shortest phase of the battle, because allowing your opponent any time to answer your Omnimon and steal back 5 memory will usually be a death sentence. Your priority at this point is to either clear the opponent's remaining security with Omni ACE and then finish them with a final swing, or transform Omni ACE into Alter B to trash all of their remaining security and connect for game. If you allow your opponent to survive past this point, then there's a good chance that they can rebuild and steamroll you, or position themselves well enough that your next Omnimon will accomplish almost nothing. So, no pressure, right? As long as you minimize the memory you pass over after establishing your first Omnimon, you will significantly increase your odds of hanging on. And if you have enough resources on hand, you can also just combo into a second Omni ACE, since the BT17 Dual Tamer will let you swing at the end of the turn, potentially clearing the last security and punching directly for game. Omni ACE is a really unique deck, and I'm glad that it took a step away from the Tribal War Greymon and Metal Garurumon decks that used to be running around. But because of the deck's unique structure, getting direct support felt unlikely, especially when you consider how long it took to even get a DNA Digivolving Omnimon in the first place. However, indirect support is always welcome, and with the release of Special Booster 2.5 and the reveals for both BT21 World Convergence and the new adventure-themed starter decks, Protector of Light and Hero of Hope, we've got a lot to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is the new level 7 staple that's taking the game by storm. Omnimon X has returned in style, primarily to support the revamped Royal Knights strategy. But as an Omnimon, it's usable here too, and it provides a ton of value to the deck. First up, you can digivolve this over an Omnimon for 2, which obviously provides a bridge from Omni ACE. You get Raid, Piercing, and Blocker straight up, which provides a ton of flexibility between offense and defense. And then there's the 2 insane effects. On play, when digivolving, if Omnimon or X antibody is in this Digimon's Digivolution cards, choose one of both players' Digimon and delete all other Digimon. Then return one of your opponent's Digimon to the bottom of the deck. And finally, end of your turn, once per turn, one of your Digimon may gain Rush for the turn and attack without suspending. So straight up, you get a variation on Omni Ace's mass removal ability, and you get the ability to swing at the end of the turn without needing the BT7 Dual Tamer, and you can remain unsuspended to maintain your blocker status. Yeah, this card power creeps Omni Ace in just about every way that matters. Sadly, you can't DNA Digivolve into this with Wargreymon X and Metal Garurumon X, which would have opened up some interesting if janky lines of play, but hey, it's still more than accessible. And even if you just Digivolve this over one of your level 6s, you still bottom deck something and have access to that end of turn swing. Next, we have 2 absolutely game-changing cards from the Adventure starter decks, a new Agumon and Gabumon. Both of these cards have the ability to warp Digivolve into their respective megas for a cost of 4, assuming you meet one of 2 requirements. If your opponent has a Digimon with 10,000 DP or higher in play, you can warp, which is a nice callback to the BT14 Wargreymon and BT15 Metal Garurumon. You can also warp if you have 3 or more total colors among your tamers, which we usually manage between our dual tamers and the black Tai Kamiya. Both of these rookies ignore all the usual Digivolution requirements, so you can go into any named Wargreymon or Metal Garurumon, which opens up a world of possibilities. These rookies both have the alternative condition to Digivolve over an Adventure Egg for free, and while we have seen the Koromon and Sunomon at this point, they're not ideal in my opinion. At the time of writing, only the Agumon fits neatly into our existing card pool since it can evo over a red egg, which is usually going to be our BT14 Koromon. The Gabumon is still accessible via Miraculous Mega Knight and EX4 Matt and Tai, but then it is competing for space with the EX4 Gabumon, who arguably provides more value at times. Finally, the reason that these rookies are so good is that they make your warp combo so much better. Say you have Agumon and the EX4 Dual Tamer out. You can warp into BT17 Wargreymon, use the Dual Tamer to play out any Gabumon, ideally your BT17 one, then you use Wargreymon's effect to warp that into a Metal Garurumon. The Dual Tamer nets you a memory when you play the Gabumon, so altogether, you can then trigger your warp combo and make an Omni Ace for 3 memory. Yeah. At the time of recording this episode, we've also had the reveals for the Wargreymon and Metal Garurumon for the starter deck, and while they are very cool, we have a bit of a mixed bag here. Both cards are aces, which is not ideal in a deck centered around a level 7 ace, but it's important to remember that Omni Ace, and probably our future incarnations of the deck, want to be getting as much done as possible without having to reach your level 7s first. So we can't write these cards off right away. Wargreymon is red and black, which has some interesting implications. When digivolving or on play, for every 2 colors among your tamers, one of your Digimon becomes immune to enemy Digimon effects until the end of the opponent's turn. Usually, this will just be the Wargreymon itself, but in warp combos, with enough unique tamers in play, you could protect a Melga too. It also has a when digivolving and when attacking skill, not once per turn mind you, where you delete the enemy Digimon with the lowest D key. So, a solid and surprisingly sticky ace that can dismantle boards and provide a smooth transition into your top end. Yeah, this card is good. Not 4 of good, but a card you'll want to run nonetheless. Then there's the Melga. It's a blue-purple, which is really nice to see, and it has a when digivolving and on-play effect to bottom deck a level 4 or lower Digimon, and ramp the level that you can target by 1 for every 2 colors among your tamers. Bottom decking is fantastic, so yeah, this is a solid inclusion just off of that. Then it has a once per turn when attacking effect to play a level 4 or lower Digimon from your trash for free. No restrictions except for the level. Yeah, this one's going to open up some interesting lines of play down the road as well. The Melga does lack protection, but I still think it is a very good card overall and worth considering at least 1 to 2 copies. One other card that I want to discuss in detail is the new Greymon from BT21. It's mono black, but still evos on any Agumon, which is good, and on play or when digivolving, it taunts one of your opponent's Digimon if you specifically have a Tai Kamiya or an adventure trait tamer in play. I don't think I need to explain why Taunt is so good in Omni ACE specifically, especially with the inclusion of the new starter deck level 6s. There are some awkward elements, such as specifically requiring a Tai Kamiya. The dual tamers we have already don't count, sadly. And unlike the BT17 Greymon, this doesn't copy any names, so it does limit your warp plays in that regard. On the other hand, this is super searchable, unlike Laplace's Demon or Trident Arm, and you can slam it down at any point without needing the color source first. And it's a body that you can swing with once the opponent's board is decimated by your Blast Digivolution. The entire adventure archetype coming out with the starter decks in BT21 has a lot of potential for an alternate build of Omni ACE, so I would encourage you guys to check out the rest of the cards that have been revealed as well. Genai's House, Island of Adventure, Our Courage United, and the new secret rare Tai Kamiya are all worth a look in my opinion. We just don't have the time to talk about them all here. Now then, there is one more card that I do want to cover, and it's one that I actually hated at first, but have slowly come around to loving. Promo War Greymon is interesting. A solid card on its own, sure. It has security attack +1 and blocker by default, and when digivolving, it deletes something with DP equal to or less than its own. Oh, and it has an all turns effect to gain 1000 DP for every color Digimon and Tamers on the field have, which I believe includes your opponents if the translation is correct. So, you know, you can blow up some pretty big bodies when you digivolve into this one. The lack of an inheritable on the Promo War Greymon is sad, but I think it offers a unique enough alternative to BT14 War Greymon that it's worth at least trying, and in some situations the removal is more flexible than what War Greymon ACE is offering. Finally, we have received an announcement about BT22 Cyber Eden, which will largely focus on characters from the Cyber Sleuth series. Among these characters is Nokia Shiramine, who commands her own Omnimon and actually had one of the first pieces of direct Omnimon support in her BT5 Tamer card. There are high hopes that we'll get new lines for both Agumon and Gabumon, hopefully with the ability to evolve between the lines, and of course, there's a chance we'll get a new DNA Omnimon that might not be an ace, which would definitely lead this deck into exciting new territory. Now, before we wrap things up, I do want to share the build that I'm working on right now in the early weeks of Special Booster 2.5 format. I only received my cards a little while ago, but I had a few things that I knew I needed to explore, especially for this video. The place of Omni X within the deck is my biggest question mark so far. I personally love Alter B as a finisher, but it has a ton of limitations, and Omnimon X is just less restrictive of a card. Most importantly, Omnimon X has utility throughout the game, whereas Alter B is really just a closing act. So I'm trying the shiny new toy at 1, because just like Alter B, it does take quite a bit of setup to actually get to him. 2 might be better, but with all the search and draw power this deck runs, finding it probably won't be an issue. I'd also been on 1 Alter B for a while too, and you know, that was never really an issue, so this really shouldn't be either. By virtue of having Raid and Piercing, Omni X, even when you don't resolve its full when digivolving effect, can often clear as many bodies and make as much progress as Omnimon Ace would without the risk of Overflow 5. So it is really attractive in that sense as well. The BT5 Dual Tamer is also something I'm testing out right now, and to be honest, I'm not sold on it yet. This is a meta call as Royal Knights begin to flood the scene, and as I thought about other decks in the meta, you're really only sweating things when they have their level 6s or level 7s out. Those are typically the turns when you want to counterattack and ideally push for game, so this Tamer does make sense. The extra 2 memory might be enough to maintain turn when doing the warp combo, or choke your opponent to 1 at least. The Tamer also grants all named Omnimons security attack +1, which means that an Omni Ace with BT17 Wargreymon and Metal Garurumon in its sources can strip an entire security stack, and more importantly, clear 3 security on the first swing and, maybe punch for game. It is riskier than Alter B since you are checking the security, but this is also way easier to set up. Most likely though, I'll be dropping the BT5 Dual Tamer for another Omni X and another EX4 Dual Tamer, but I want to get more results in before I decide for sure. The only other thing worth mentioning is that I have been having a decent amount of success with BT14 Skull Greymon. It's a nice way to out big bodies for a reasonable amount of memory, and alongside BT17 Agumon and BT17 Greymon, it forms a recursive package that can quickly spiral your advantage while frustrating the opponent. It's absolutely divine into the Royal Knights matchup, and if you manage your memory well enough, it's also very devastating for the Gallenmon matchup as well. Overall, the deck still feels good to play, though none of its matchups have notably improved heading into Special Booster 2.5 format. Though I think if I'm being honest, we're really gonna need the new starter deck, Agumon and probably the Gabumon as well, to see any significant innovation and improved viability for the deck. I'd say it's comfortably tier 2 right now, but it's not anywhere near encroaching tier 1.5 or even 1 unless it gets some new tools. And this is essentially because we're typically a turn slower than everything else, and we are fairly memory inefficient in the early game, which is a big issue that has to be addressed. But hey, at the end of the day, we have to play with the cards we have right now, and at least at this point in the format, I do think that this is a solid list to at least work with. He's not always the strongest or the fastest, but Omnimon still commands respect. And I hope that I've convinced you to see the promise in this deck and everything that it can do. I also hope you guys enjoyed this more in-depth guide and approach to looking at a deck. It was an absolute monster to produce, but for a deck that's really captivated my interest in this way, I really couldn't do any less. And honestly, I have had way more fun putting together something more ambitious like this than I would just quickly cobbling together a deck profile. And I'd love to be able to do this again, and hey, if we can get this video to, let's say, 250 likes, I will do a similar deep dive on one of these 4 decks. I should probably mention as well that I've got more collabs with many of your favorite Digitubers in the works as well, so make sure to subscribe to catch them when they premiere. And honestly, the Special Booster 2.5 has really stoked my creativity, and I am looking forward to bringing you even more amazing Digimon TCG content. It's gonna be a good time, trust me.